March 9th, 2026, Village of Lake Bluff Finance Committee meeting. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Member Fisher?
Here.
Member Renner?
Here.
Chair Ryder.
Here. First item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from October 27th, 2025. Been a long time. Does anyone have any questions? We'll call for a motion. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 27th, 2025, Finance Committee?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay. First, non-agenda items and visitors. The Finance Committee allocates 15 minutes at this time for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the committee on any matter not listed on the agenda. Do we have anyone who would like to address the committee on a non-agenda item?
No, ma'am.
That being the case, we'll move to item number 4. And our first item of business there is review of the budget calendar. And I believe we have Ms. O'Connell ready to present to us on this.
Sure. So included in the packet was just a draft revision to the budget calendar with the new meeting dates to reflect what we're currently doing. This meeting is on there as the 9th and the 30th. We're reviewing fee schedule, pay plan, multi-year capital projects in detail. We'll look at the water operating budget and rate schedule, and maybe we'll have a water rate study.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay, thank you. Then moving to 4B, review of the general fund.
I have slides. I'm just waiting for it to come on.
Okay. As I understand it, we're waiting for slides to load. There's a memo in our packet addressed to the Finance Committee members summarizing some of the highlights, but we have Bettina's presentation. Thank you.
You ready?
Yes.
So tonight, we're reviewing the fiscal year 27-28 biennial general fund and capital project overview. So the goal is just to do a high-level walkthrough and look at some key revenues, some expense trends, and some of the planned capital investments. We'll start with a high-level overview of the village financial outlook. So that includes a 3.4% increase in operational expenditures. We're planning targeted use of reserves to support major infrastructure investments, as we've discussed in the past. On the revenue side, trends of property tax growth is mainly driven by CPI adjustments and new construction. Sales tax is projected to increase about 3%, just to bring it more current with historical trends. Historically, we've been really conservative, so this year I'm looking at just aligning with historical data. State income tax distributions have been stronger than expected, so those have been increased to also reflect historical data, even keeping in mind the potential reduction that Governor Pritzker's talked about, which is small. It's like under 0.03% or something. It's a small reduction. Capital priorities will include water, sanitary roads, bridges, and stormwater infrastructure. And we're also planning some facility improvements at Village Hall, public safety, public works, and the train station that we'll look at, which there's a chart or a large sheet on your dais that will go over that as well. So the reserve strategy, once again, this year we're doing transfers to the capital fund and the vehicle replacement fund and the stormwater fund. Because of the major infrastructure investments, we're projecting reserves to decline from 92% to 51% by the end of 2028, which is what we've talked about in the projections in the past. So the budget timeline, we use the biennial approach, which allows us to plan for 2 years and maintain appropriations, and then we look at the long term, and the second year, as always, we review and typically do updates. Department worksheets began in December. And now we're reviewing at the Finance Committee level here in March, and there will be a public hearing on April 13th, with final budget adoption targeted for May 1st as required by law. So the revenue highlights, as I said earlier, property tax growth, sales tax increases, state income tax boost, a slight decline in licenses and leases due to some consolidations on the cell tower, and a shift in grant revenue as we move that grant revenue to the capital and stormwater fund where those projects align and the expenses align.
Yeah. And other than Brian, this should be old news, right? We've been talking about it a lot. And actually, some of it I'm very curious when we get to some of the capital projects, which you remember, Brian, this laundry list of things that we haven't been able to find ways to fund yet, but still prioritize each year.
So the operational expenses, like I said earlier, are set up with really static operating costs of 3.4% and increases. There's some higher costs on the police and fire side in insurance and staffing and equipment. The boards and commissions budget has typically held the expense for the target sales tax incentive. Since that's concluded, we're looking at a 66% drop in that budget. And overall, budget rises 19.4% for contracted snow removal and the vehicle replacement contributions. Do you want to talk about these, Jeff? Included on your dais is, on the second sheet, is a capital summary review that we typically look at the 15 years.
Which one's
That one.
this one?
Yep.
Thanks.
But from a facilities perspective, we have train station repairs, mortar and foundation. There's some Walnut House replacement of fire safety improvements. The Public Works facilities looking at electrical upgrades and building repairs and some HVAC work. And the Public Safety building, we're looking at the access control system replacement and some interior improvements. Right? This is more of a repeat of that. Some other renovations that haven't been mentioned yet. So to the gazebo, there's design phase work to upgrade or rebuild some of the gazebo. And there's also included in the budget public Wi-Fi for the Village Green in FY27. And I think the rest of it I already kind of went over, unless anybody has a specific question. So Jeff is here to go over the capital-specific project side of the world. And I think also in your packet, there's a priority sheet that will rank the projects. If you look
This one.
yeah, it's called green through red. And it'll rank the projects that are budgeted with a B, and the ones that are on our wish list or on our plan list are also ranked in there for him to go through.
That's good, that's good. Yeah, interrupt with any questions you have. I mean, a lot of the capitals in items at the 7 o'clock meeting for the board. We have Green Bay Road items, we have storm water things going on. It's a busy construction season here this spring. But this capital project ranking, as you can see the categories where I ranked them on to the side to try to decide what our priorities are. And they're pretty much everything we have budgeted is the top 10. And all of those things, I believe, are in for this year, except for path repaving. I think there's some path repaving in the second year, the 2-year budget. The highest ones that are not budgeted right now are the 4176 interchange aesthetics for the when they redo that whole interchange, but that keeps getting pushed off by IDOT, so that's not in the next 2 years. I don't think it's going to happen until 2030, by the time they get to that. And then Thorn Valley Road, our gravel road, which is in need of some regraving or just paving. That was built, in the early 90s, Drew? And the developer was supposed to pave it and put water and sewer in, and it's never happened. But the road is out of shape and needs some work, so we either have to decide if we're going to pave it or not. But again, our big projects are the storm sewer going up east-north, which is ahead of schedule right now. They're really moving on that one. Green Bay Road is supposed to start early April. They're actually gonna start with tree removal in late March because there's a handful of trees that get removed. They have to be removed before April 1st because of the long-eared bat before its nesting season. So that will happen late this month. Everything else is, like I said, in the works. The lead service replacement, we were gonna start doing this next budget year, a 50/50 program with people with lead services. You're gonna see that final lead service removal plan at the next board meeting, I believe. The CBD Block 1, those bids are for your approval later tonight. And then, yeah, there's some ravine work for this fall, Boardman Court, Bath and Tennis storm sewer. There's a flooding problem in the house in that area. There's a dip in the road. It overtops the dip, goes into the house. So we're trying to alleviate that problem. But I guess in general, I'm here to answer your questions.
I have a question, Chair.
Yes.
This is a thing I've been waiting to happen because I believe it is a safety issue in Lake Bluff. The bike path lighting, I really believe that should be addressed. I mean, it is not a safe area for people walking from one half of village to the other half of a village. And I've been waiting for that. I know that it was delayed because of COVID. It was about 70 grand at the time. I don't know how much it would be today, but I believe it is important. And I would really, really like the priority of that item to be raised because I think it's actually important.
I can, that project was fully designed. It's on the shelf. I can go back and try to see what the current cost estimate would be and take a look at what
I
it
mean,
takes
I
to
have
do it.
had quite a few comments from people coming back from the restaurant and bar area from town to North Terrace, and thinking twice about walking through that area below the bridges. And so it's very dark, and it would be great to have some lighting down there.
And then this summer, we're gonna bring to you, the board in April, a plan to finish the engineering for the storm sewer project all the way to the viaduct. That, the way the railroad is talking, we're gonna have to move that pipe south of the bike path. So I will look to see if that would impact. I don't wanna install lights and have to rip it back out for the larger project. But we'll
Cool.
look at that and try to update the costs and make sure it's a real, I think I took our old one, I added 25% for the last few years, and that's as much as I looked at it so far, but I can look deeper at it.
Jeff, the scope of that, was that to West Center, wrapped around the corner up to the middle school?
It
the
started
first crossing?
across the street from the middle school and took, I think, the low road of the path and then down and then up into connect to West Center.
I think we pursued multiple grants and never were successful with that.
We've tried. Yes.
Yeah.
When you go below the bridge, the train track, it's pretty dark, but when you go up a little bit the slope, before you arrive to that cut through to West Center, I think, or West Center, it's really dark.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a serious safety point to that.
One thing we learned in our research of the original study was that you have to do it all, because if you do spotty lighting, it actually makes people feel more unsafe to go from light to dark. So there didn't seem to be a way to peel that back, to just kind of space them
Like
out more to
Project
maybe
Light
save
version,
costs.
yeah.
So we'll have to, like I said, I have that all designed. We can take a look at that and update the costs and see what it would take to do.
I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
And this was separate than the original landscape plan we had for that whole corridor, right, which we couldn't get bids on.
That is correct.
Okay.
Was that like 6 years ago that was designed? It's been a while.
Yeah, it was 2020.
Is it 6 years? Jeez, that was like 2 years ago.
It's been a while.
We talked about it in March 2020.
Well, it's best to do the
and
lighting
then
first.
we got shut down 2 weeks later.
That project and the Boardman project were the ones that we delayed with some budget uncertainty getting into COVID.
Do we, I'm sorry.
No, no,
Okay.
go ahead.
Do we, the studies that are going on the interchange, the 41-176 interchange, do we have any contribution to that, or is that all the state that's doing those studies?
It is all the state. There are some aesthetic improvements that we
Oh, that's
can
what the
go in on.
aesthetic, okay.
And generally, they're still paid 80/20 by the state.
Okay.
One problem there too is they said, do you want lighting? And we wouldn't mind a couple lights on that stretch,
Sure.
but it's basically prison lighting. If you go with the IDOT standard, you get all the lights or no lights. So we didn't do that. There are some landscaping things we've talked about.
Sure.
There's some sidewalks that we talked about, but they are still holding that back from full design. They're restarting the pump station project right now. And I think they're peeling off the other railroad bridge to the north of town. There's an outfall pipe to help that drain better. They've peeled that section out of that bit larger project as well. So they're not there yet to start on the full interchange.
Going back a couple of slides, you mentioned the gazebo. What are we doing with the gazebo?
So the gazebo was a bicentennial gift to the village that has only had, patch and paint.
Sure.
Since 1976. And there, it's at the point where it needs some TLC, like redoing some of the brick and mortar, and the stairs may have to be repoured, and there's some other things that it needs some rehabilitation work that is gonna take some planning effort, but it's kind of spending the first year of the budget planning that.
Okay.
And then the next year actually executing it. There's an element to it, some I would call upgrades, is that there's a desire to have free Wi-Fi in the Village Green Park for folks. And so there's a way to do that rather inexpensively, I think around 10 grand to do that now. And then there's also the ability, we're trying to negotiate with some of these fiber providers to, as part of their license agreement, to make that happen for the village. But we're still setting aside 10 grand to try to make that happen too.
I mentioned a long time ago on the board, but if we're going to start doing planning for that upgrade, I would like you to consider lightning protection on the top of the gazebo. If you go down to the beach, all of the shelters have lightning protection, and that's because if a storm rolls in, people normally would run under the shelter. Unless a building is enclosed, if it's open, that's a death trap for someone to, oh, it's raining, let's get inside the gazebo without lightning protection. You could put, maybe one aerial might be enough to do it.
Noted.
Thank you.
And then we talked a little bit, within the forecast for the infrastructure, we do have the secure new racks for the train station, commuter station in the, not next year, but the next year after, right? So,
Bicycle racks.
yep, secure bicycle racks.
Oh boy, bicycle routes would be good too, right?
Yeah, that's a second issue,
I heard
but I'm not
racks.
gonna get into that.
Definitely heard racks.
Yes.
Does anybody have any other questions? Or have you completed? Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Back to you, Bettina.
So next on the agenda, which does have some thought and consideration, is the vehicle replacement fund. Do you want me to share my
Yeah,
screen
please.
with everybody?
We spent a lot of time on the equipment replacement, vehicle replacement fund, the VERF, depends who you ask, inside Village Hall. This year, particularly because of, we obviously have that fire truck purchase, and everything is more expensive and harder to get, and so we spend a lot of time researching what are other communities doing to plan for this. Are they changing their methodologies or strategies to decide when they replace something? Historically, it's been, if you're gonna end up spending half of what it costs to replace something, you replace it, but those numbers have changed a lot in terms of what the replacement costs are. So now is people's preventative maintenance, and those investments are, keeping equipment is, people are doing it longer and longer and longer, and we are not, different in that regard. We're doing the same. And so we went back and revisited all of the assets within there, and the number is,
So 42 assets, 28 vehicles, and 14 heavy equipment, which was stated in the packet, but overall age, 11.57 years, vehicles range 9.4, and heavy equipment's at 15.7. And the heavy equipment side of the world, in the next 5, 6, 7, 8-year range, there's a lot of replacement that will likely need to happen. So I took it to terms of it will happen, just for the sake of planning. And our current contributions have met current needs, and we're at a 1.3 fund balance in the vehicle replacement fund, but factoring in the fire truck annual payment for, the 8-year period, and then potentially rolling out another one, because there are 2, and we'll be maybe looking at another lease after that. What would happen to, the funds with the depletion of potential purchases for trucks and, sewer vacs and things that would
Street
need,
sweeper,
street
yep.
sweeper, things that need replacing. And in that process, realize that we should, rather than all of a sudden need to spike up a contribution, let's do a smoothing and ramp it up slowly for the next, after this budget cycle, look at ramping it up 75, 100, 125, and then 150, and then maintaining that number for a while, because that gets us through the potential cycle of all these larger replacements without depleting the fund to nothing. It still would, there'd still be depletion. I don't know how easy this is to read up there, but.
And just for everybody's information, about 10 years ago, Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, Glenview, and Buffalo Grove, we put out a joint RFP, and we ended up working with a firm, Mercury, that specializes in fleet management. And we looked at how we maintain our fleets in terms of in-house, out-of-house, and the mix of that in terms of third-party doing certain work on very specialized equipment, namely fire trucks. And their evaluation of Lake Bluff was, you guys are doing, this is the most economical way you can do it, and we have a full-time mechanic. And I think that's bearing fruit today with our current PM cycle and how we're doing things and maintaining this fleet and able to keep our equipment around for a very long time. And it's helping us put money in other assets, which is an important need. But another part of that, going back and reviewing that, was maintaining the fire trucks. I think, we've seen some pretty whoppers of bills for repairs of late. And even back then, it was trying to find cheaper ways to do it, and maybe having a central municipal function, like maybe Lake Forest could do it for all of us, or Glenview. And it didn't make sense then. And I went back and revisited that with some of the other managers, and it still doesn't. But it's one of the things we're constantly analyzing, how we do services in-house and out-of-house, and seeing what's the best cost-effective approach. So I just want to remind you all that we did that before, and it was, I think, helpful for us to this day. So.
I have a question that is a stupid question. And I say this is stupid because this is a out-of-the-box question. So a PE took over that company in Wisconsin. The price went from $300,000 to $2.5 million per truck. That's the story in the last 2 years.
Right.
Can we buy European trucks, or can we buy trucks from other countries as opposed to what is here? Are we forced into a standard of trucks to operate on this land?
No, it's not a stupid question. You can buy other fire trucks made in other places. It is done. Yes, it has been done. Yeah.
Okay. But the price of maintenance will go up because you'd have to find the parts.
There's pros and cons of doing it, and I think there have been, when you're looking at apparatuses of this scale and size, is that the price delta is not that great when you're looking at, there's different types of trucks for different purposes that vary greatly. And there's going to be some differences, but there's competitive bidding that goes on if you're trying to spec a certain style of truck. It's going to be expensive. I think the universe of manufacturers is smaller, but it's,
Obviously.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How does what we're proposing here with the smoothing vary from what, say, we were planning a few years ago? Is it simply the increase in cost of these capital purchases that requires sort of a
We've been
uptick?
ratcheting it up a little bit.
Right.
Year after year, from how far back you want to go, 2008, we ratcheted it down just because there was funds. We
Right.
didn't know what money was going to be available. So we said, hey, hit the pause button on replacement, a lot of things. And we reduced our VERF investment for a few years, and we slowly started ratcheting it back up.
And then during COVID, we kind of froze again
Froze,
because we
yeah.
were unsure of
Yeah.
revenues and what that would look like. And now we're back. And, I mean, I guess the short answer is this fund, the fund balance is the green line. You know, if we don't ramp up something, it will be depleted. We would need to replace one of the larger pieces of heavy equipment quicker than we anticipate.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say staff, you know, their maintenance and their efforts and things that they do to keep us running, and I mean, they do an awesome job. So it could last a lot longer. But my thought was looking at the number and the ages and being more prepared than we are.
Yeah, smoothing. And if you look too, that green line, the value of that fund has grown as the equipment assets have grown in price. Like, it's only recently become a major fund.
Right.
By definition.
true.
So it's never gotten to this point because equipment wasn't that expensive. And now it's just astronomical.
So this isn't necessarily a budget decision for now, because what's being proposed for the current two-year budget is more in line with what we have been doing. It's a little bit of an increase based on what's being purchased and changes to squad car pricing and some IT equipment, but the ramp-up starts outside of this budget cycle. So it's just more of a need to know, be aware, and look forward, you know, to the future and know that there'll likely be some increases coming.
So when we look at the future price of vehicles, we're trying to apply historical averages or where we think a new car might be 5 years from now.
I mean, I apply an inflation rate when I look at the chart of, I don't have that up, but I have every vehicle,
Sure.
and I, you know, apply an inflation rate to each one and when they were purchased and what the current sale price is and where I think it could land.
Yeah.
It's difficult to say. I will say from a police perspective, I think the squad car pricing for the actual vehicles has remained somewhat stagnant. It's the upfitting that has grown immensely. It's a lot.
It used to be $8,000 and
Now it's like
20.
$24,000 per squad to upfit it. So with more technology comes more expense. Right. Yeah.
For just some context, I was talking with a friend who's in California, and he's like, Drew, you want to talk about real problems? I'm trying to get rid of a purely battery-driven police fleet in CNG. He's like, I'm fighting some geographical standards that are not, that you don't face in Illinois. And just, again, high level from tonight's conversations, we've thrown a lot at you, and tonight's conversation was introductory almost, and the idea that this is a fluid process. We're going to be back at the next meeting on the 30th talking about other things, but the budget doesn't go to you until April ultimately. But at the end of the 30th, we'd be looking for a recommendation to the village board. But tonight's kind of an intro. It's a lot. If you want to go back and talk about capital projects and go revisit facilities and have questions about that, there's a conversation that'll take place later tonight that one of the things that you may note in there is the idea of some security improvements. There's some stuff earmarked in there. We don't know what's going to come of a study if it's done, but so we're trying to do some placeholders and plan for that.
We've talked about this before, but just for anyone watching or just for the record, the reserves. And we mentioned about the reserves going down from, we're way over our standard target, but with all this capital improvement, we're going down. What is our minimum, or not minimum, what is our desired threshold and where are we going to end up in a few years?
So here's my projections, and as far as budget year, we're looking at if everything that we budgeted for is spent in the same way, we're looking to end up around 50-51%.
And what's our
And that's at policy.
That's policy, so you're targeting that
That's policy.
policy. Yeah, because it used to be much lower a long time ago. That's a healthy way to maintain your emergency funds.
So that's fiscal year 2028, correct?
Right.
And then what's expected to happen the following year?
I don't have, we
You
do
don't?
two-year budget, so I don't.
Okay,
Can't tell
okay.
you that exactly.
But that's our goal, is to maintain the route,
The goal is to maintain.
future.
Okay.
A large amount of, the reductions, obviously, that we're transferring, $1 million to capital and $500,000 to stormwater utility
yeah.
for those capital projects. And will there be the need for some of that to continue? Likely for stormwater utility, right? But it depends on, are we taking out bond debt? What does the payment look like? What's the rate of return that we're getting, and how does that factor into the revenue stream? So, you know, if we're meeting the bond payment with the revenue stream, there might not need to be additional contributions. It just kind of, we have to wait and see where we're at and how much we're actually needing to loan.
This is a stormwater taxing district, right? Is that what we're talking about?
It's this, we have a separate stormwater utility fund that
Right.
we've established that's, it takes transfers from other funds, general fund namely, but it also generates its own through the fee system.
Right.
That, there's an item later tonight on the agenda for the improvement, stormwater improvement at Evanston between East Blodgett and East Washington, I believe. And, I'm sorry? Woodland, sorry, thank you. East Woodland. But that's a step of a series of improvements that ultimately I assume will be built, but I can't tell you when the other steps will happen because of the cost and
Right.
the idea that there's numerous stormwater projects at the villages
Right.
considering in the mix, and that's just one area, and each one of them will be rated differently, and some of them are higher, I'll call it bang for the buck, depending on how many households and areas it can improve. But at the end of the day, the board will have to decide if they want to accelerate how they fund those activities. And what does that mean? That can be an increase in the utility fees and that structure. The board, when that was originally approved, I think it was 2023. The
Yeah,
idea was,
5 year.
yeah, they would wait 5 years before you revisited the fee structure. You weren't here when we
Right,
had
but,
those
yeah.
conversations. We had public meetings.
And everyone was in support of that fee.
In fact, the most interesting feedback was, I
Let's
spent
take
more than
it.
this on coffee,
Yeah.
double it, go faster.
Yeah.
That was pretty
And
common.
that's an
refrain.
option we can look at.
Yeah.
later.
The response from conservative members of our community was, can you go faster?
Right.
That was the question.
Yeah, because I think what's going to happen is that this is a huge undertaking, one of our largest projects.
The largest.
And,
yeah.
and once it's complete, not all residents will understand that, well, why is my street in the
I'm
terrace?
still flooding. What's going on?
Still flooding.
Yeah,
I thought you spent all this money, so there'll definitely have to be a public campaign that when that's closed, what the next steps are and how we would fund them, so the public knows.
Yep. Actually, that was going to be one of my questions to Jeff for the project we do on Woodland and East Evanston. I mean, I know that you're putting bigger pipes underground. I mean, could we connect it straight on to the next to be pipe?
Maybe. You know, it's at Woodland, which is 2 blocks north of East North, and it's a little bit lower than East North, so you're fighting gravity. We haven't looked at what's in the way between, you know, point X and point Y to get there. Our master stormwater plan looks at the whole area pretty much north of East North, that whole quadrant of Blodgett, from Sheridan to East North. And, you know, there's a new pipe all the way up Blodgett, a new pipe all the way up Woodland. In a perfect world, you would do that sequentially from the bottom to the top, everything would make sense. But when you have hot spots of problems that are not starting at the bottom, we may have to modify that plan a little bit and see what is the easiest way to get our worst spots fixed first. Generally, the big pipe takes a lot of water that is normally going to what is now our big pipe, which goes down East Washington. And as we take water out of that existing pipe, it has more capacity for areas like this Evanston dip in the road. So that makes more capacity in that pipe, but if we keep direct tapping the big pipe instead of letting it stay in that older pipe, you start to lose we have a 50-year design level at the viaduct, so there's give and take when you start putting stuff in different watersheds and different systems. But that's something I haven't looked all the way at to see if we could take this dip in the road at Evanston. The problem at Evanston is the inlets and the pipe are just in really bad shape. Our public works guys have, you know, patched them up several times, but they're original infrastructure to the village, so their time has come.
Yep. And I know that Blodgett, Washington, I used to live on Washington and Moffett. Those areas, Washington, Moffett, North and Blodgett, are absolutely prone to too much water. I get that. Yeah. So I know that your work is hard to actually get that water to move around. I get that.
Yeah, and it's, you know, we have our standards about not flooding the street and not flooding houses has generally been our highest thought is how do we stop houses from flooding? This is one of those cases where we're trying to focus on that. Yeah, so the big red shape in the upper right is all one area in our study, and, you know, we're not gonna do that. I think it's $11 million worth of work at once. So, the project we're gonna look at later tonight, I think I told Drew, I think it's the best we can do for less than $3 million. So that's why that's the project we're doing right now. But once you get bigger pipes all the way going east, then that helps it more.
Yeah, but each one of those loops is, 10 million or whatever it's gonna be for each one of those.
It's expensive. You know, and the problem at Evanston is that water flows down Blodgett and Woodland, goes around the corner and finds this dip because the storm sewers on Woodland and Blodgett aren't big enough. And
Yeah.
then I've seen the residents out there trying to empty, clear the drains from debris, and I had to go tell them to stop because the water's actually coming up in this spot. It's not, it's going right past the pipe this is trying to drain to, so.
There's a spot on Washington Ave where you will have 2 feet of water because you don't notice it, but that road actually does a little deep. And all of a sudden, everybody gets flooded, even though the water should go down. It's very maddening at some point.
And when it rains hard, we don't have the personnel to go put barricades out at the 7 different hotspots all in, the half hour before some of these roads are closed. So the residents know not to go down those streets, but I've seen people go through streets they probably shouldn't, and it really floods quickly in those
Yeah,
areas.
we have a car, we have a picture of a car in 14 feet of water under the viaduct.
Yeah.
Still the lights going, by the way.
So how do we prioritize these hotspots? As I understand it, we've made a recommendation to move forward with this particular one, but it's before the big pipe gets that far east, right? How in general are we able to make the decisions to move forward on something like this now as opposed to years from now?
So most of the straws, as we call them, depend on the pipe going a lot further than Moffett. So we're gonna be done at
Yes.
Moffett now. We're trying to get the next phase within the next couple of years, depending on how much money is available. Which is why another reason why we're aggressively pursuing any kind of federal or state funding, because every dollar we get from an outside source is another dollar we can use to help more people off of the big pipe. But there is, like I said, we took a survey of the community when we did the study, and everybody reported their flooding that
I see.
reported. Some new ones pop up, there's new residents move in, they have problems that other people didn't report. So we keep track of, we used to call it the measles map, which is where the houses flood and where we have, significant street closures. And like I said, this bigger area, if it's $11 million to do all those pipes, we're never gonna spend $11 million at once on that. The study gives us the blueprint as these 100-year-old pipes have problems, what should it be? So there might be a time where one section of pipe is bad and we put a 24-inch pipe, it still connects to the old 12. So
I
we
see, I
know
see.
We're not gonna put a 12 and then have that get
And
ripped
then-
out later.
I
So
see,
now
I see.
we know what our system should look like. Prioritized, again, we've always tried to prioritize house flooding if we can eliminate that. And then road closures, and then some of it is even as much as we just repaved that street, but this other street's not repaved. So all else being equal, I'd rather dig up the street that needs to be repaved 2 years from now.
I see, okay.
So I think, at some point we have a public meeting, we list every little project, how much it costs, and then what the village can do, and then if people, instead of wanting to pay for a cup of coffee, want to pay for a dinner at Morton's, they can maybe get some of this faster.
And
It
the
was
other thing-
actually, that thought you have was actually mentioned in those meetings where people were willing to pay. The fee is typically for a normal $700,000 EAV was $200. People say, we can pay more than that.
Well, if you can show them what that'll accelerate and what it'll do quicker, then it's up to the residents, right?
It's
These
really,
right now are generating about $1 million a year.
it's really hard for me to imagine how we could go
$1 million for
Faster than we-
whatever GAV.
That's over the total village.
Right.
So the idea the idea was that like we pick projects for the transmission, like the village's investment in the
Right,
deep
but
tunnel
what I'm
was
saying is the average cost to a homeowner is what? Right now.
175. is what
So it's 175 to generate $1 million a year, roughly.
it's about
850,000.
close to $1 million.
Okay,
And yeah, it's about 170 to 200
Yeah.
on average for.
and the total to do everything is 11 million.
No, that was just that one.
That was just that one section.
area.
Everything.
So, and prioritize as well, there are some smaller bites that are less than $500,000.
Okay.
There are some small systems that drain a street or two that dump into a ravine, and the outfall of the ravine is now 4 feet in the air because everything's eroded around it, and it's an old pipe, and, that sort of stuff will come up hotter than other projects, and we'll just have to do them and fail.
I think there's an engineering logic progression, like you're mentioning, like, as the engineer, I think this, and this should be the steps. And then we just have to look at the funding.
Some of those are in the rating sheet that we provided. Some of them are still the big lump of Moffett Road area. Some of them have broken out because I know they're probably not going to wait for the full.
It's, if we take it to $2 or $3 million a year, it's just, that speeds it up, but what do the residents want to pay?
It's a balance. And what we know is that we've locked it in for 5 years, and we're moving as quickly as I've ever seen anything. Maybe that's not saying a lot, but I think this has been our period of time to really learn what we can do and during what period of time. And so it'll be, the time period will be up before we know it.
But I think the residents do have to understand what the results will be at each stage. What won't happen, what will happen. For instance, we're all used to the viaduct flooding, right, and that road shutting down. It doesn't mean that when we have a big storm, it's gonna stay dry for the rest of it forever. It's going to be flooded, it'll just be flooded for a much shorter period of time. So when the first person pulls up and says, we just spent this, and I can't get through the viaduct, I'm saying there has to be some public education.
For sure.
Drew will be sweating on that one.
Well, yeah. But you understand it, right? That, is it 50-year, I mean, we're
It's
going.
50. That was an economic decision that the
Yeah.
100-year storm was just not viable. And if you think about it, maybe flooding once more every 10 years, you just knock
right.
$6 million off the price of the project. It's a trade-off that I think we're willing to take.
Right, right.
And you're right, instead of being flooded for 24 hours, it shouldn't flood for more than 4 or 6 hours, I think, at the most.
Exactly.
So
I mean, right now, it's less than a 1-year event.
Right.
I'm just to the point about a cup of coffee, that question. Had we had twice as much money as we do now, would we have been able to go twice as fast? It doesn't seem like it to me.
No,
At this
but-
point.
But we would be looking at, I think we'd be looking at the first straw right now, because we would have a path forward on the transmission main.
I see.
Because I think we would have at least, I think that's right.
we'd be evaluating a straw to the big pipe versus some of the smaller,
Yeah.
more regional projects in
Yeah.
different areas of the village.
All right.
We'd be a step ahead.
We would be going twice as long, that's the answer.
Well, I think the transmission would be done faster,
But there's no
because
reason,
there would be certain funding for.
there's no reason a year from now, we couldn't go to the village and say, do you want us to raise it so we can do faster?
Yeah, well, that's what, I think, to that point, we have an ordinance, I believe it's an ordinance, but ordinances can change, right?
Right.
I mean, are we unduly limiting ourselves in a way that we ought to rethink sooner than,
You're 24 months away, right? It'll come fast. And we've been, like, this main transmission section, we've been designing it and doing all the studies necessary to qualify for any and every grant under the sun.
well, right.
And it's probably not gonna happen, right? And that's more cost and some more time, but at the end of the day, I think you'll have to make those same decisions for each one of the trunks and each one of the straws. You have to make those decisions, because there will be other grant and funding opportunities for these other straws. Believe it or not.
Yeah. I guess that's what my skepticism that we would have been able to move twice as fast was in part due to, because
Just
of-
faster, not twice, it's just faster.
I think up to
But
now,
it-
we couldn't have gone twice as fast, but as the next 5 years go by,
Yes.
more money would let us go faster from getting the main pipe up to Sheridan Road, to getting some of the straws, and getting some of the other projects done. It's been a pretty all-out effort to get just the main pipe permitted. It's such a big process through the railroad and the state and everybody else that has been a big lift. The other projects are more local, which means the engineering costs half, because it's not through IDOT standards all the time, and they can go much faster.
And part of this other, the rhythm of all this, when this was being discussed about, what is the appropriate way to fund these improvements. The rhythm issue was, this is 100 years in the making. We shouldn't make the current set of residents solve it today, you know, like to try to put that on their shoulders seemed a little unfair. That was part of the conversation.
It's a hard one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
And
I don't know if there's,
one last stupid question I'm gonna ask it. This extends, okay, does this extend over Green Bay Road? Are we doing improvements in Green Bay Road, or is that a different watershed?
We're doing improvements in Green Bay Road with the Green Bay Road project.
Okay.
So they're replacing the storm sewer that's there now. Essentially, we're still tying into smaller pipes on West Center and elsewhere, so we're putting oversized pipes underground to hold water, so we keep the pavement dry up to the 10-year storm.
But the west terrace does not go into this
The
system.
West
correct.
terrace does not, no, that has its own outfall to the
Gotcha.
Skokie.
To the watershed, yeah.
Gotcha, thank you.
any other facility questions, earth questions, operational questions? Again, in review, no new employees, same headcount, automatically the same operationally. It's really about the capital and equipment.
There's a detailed spreadsheet here that we didn't review. I don't know if you want to speak to that. Yeah, that's the one I was looking at. This is how we roll up to numbers for each of these buildings, is that the various,
Right, it's the breakout of the various projects related to the facilities items.
in each of the upcoming years.
Right.
Is this available for people to see? I don't remember seeing this in the packet.
I'm working on it.
Is that one?
I'm just wondering, no, it's this one. I don't remember seeing this one in the packet, not that it,
If it's not, it can be. There's no reason.
yeah, I think it's interesting detail for anybody who's looking at it. I recall window replacement, but is that in this fiscal year?
It is.
I
It's
see.
behind schedule. The contractor's asking for more time.
But it's
It's going to
not,
be happening. It's
Okay.
very soon.
okay, and that's why we don't see it here, even
is
though
correct.
it might actually happen after April.
Current year, yes.
Okay. Oh, there it is, I see. Mm-hmm. Okay,
And
I
these
mean-
numbers, I mean, these numbers are not extremely large, and certainly when you compare it to maybe, I don't know, our sister city to the south and what they're doing in certain public safety buildings.
yeah, it looks eminently reasonable. Does anyone have any other questions or topics that we'd like to discuss in this last few minutes? Or we'll take a recess between now and the next meeting? Okay.
So we will go back and look at that lighting project and revisit that and see if we can get a new number for that and see if that gets added to the list. And if you have any other questions in the meantime, like I said, this is largely introductory and something else we can talk about at the next meeting.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting of the Finance Committee?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Recording stopped.